Digital Banking Awareness Month. Title sponsor, Standard Chartered Bank Limited, here for good, powered by eSeva. In association with Prabhu Bank Limited, power to succeed. NIC Asia, Bank Pani, Sathi Pani, Ramro Pani, Hamro Pani. Supported by Connect IPS, Pay Direct from Bank, Sunrise Bank Limited, Hami Sangai, Sanima Bank Limited, Sabal Ani Viswasiniye, Siddhartha Bank, Samandha Sadebhariलाई, Mahalakshmi Vikas Bank Limited, Sabal Bank, Safal Sahkarya, ICFC Finance Limited, your complete banking solution. Namaste Pay, payment ko saral way, khalti, paisa ko naya ठेगाना, IME Pay.
Namaste and welcome to your audience in this brand new episode of Digital Awareness Banking Special. It's me, Rohan Shrestha, and today we are going to focus on the digital banking system, the importance of digital banking in context of Nepal. And for this, we have the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank, Anirvan Ghosh Dastidar. Let me welcome him. Welcome, sir. Welcome to News 24 Television.
Thank you for having us.
How are you, sir?
Very well.
How do you evaluate the ongoing digital banking shift in Nepalese society?
See, Rohan, globally, the digital transformation across the world has been revolutionary, right? And I think our view is the pace of digital shift in Nepal, especially in this part of the world, hasn't been any less, right? If you see the new regulatory guidelines on interoperability, payment systems. So, I think you can't compare Nepal with a very sophisticated market, but I would argue that in a South Asia context, Nepal has moved rapidly in the digital conquest. Look at eSeva, PhonePe, the QR payment system, and this whole move to go cashless, right? So, just to give you an idea, 10 to 12 years ago, we were with the central bank discussing electronic check clearing capability, and today we are actually discussing blockchain for imports and trade. So that's the kind of shift I think Nepal is seeing.
Is it that natural?
I think it is not a question of natural, it's the environment and the whole ecosystem which is changing rapidly around us. The way consumers are behaving, what's happening in terms of technology, and like every other market, and especially in the subcontinent context, Nepal is keeping up very quickly. And we see a lot of startups, we see a lot of ideation in Nepal, and given the youth in this country, I mean, F1 Soft is a great example, right?
Right.
So there is lots happening on the digital landscape.
What about Standard Chartered Bank?
So Standard Chartered Bank for us, one is, look, we are an international bank. We are present in almost 60 markets across the globe, right? So our differentiation is that we have two verticals. One is you have the online banking and the SC mobile app, which again is not very different from what our industry players have. We don't white label it using a common platform, which many banks do. And the second, which is proprietary, which we have, is straight to bank. Right now, our edge is we bring a lot of best in class practices, technology from other parts of the bank globally into Nepal, and straight to bank is a great example, where clients today, and it's proprietary to Standard Chartered Bank, no other local bank has it, where you can do cash initiation, trade initiation, API solutions, host to host integration, and reconciliations, right? So it also allows swift net connectivity, and one of the things is through S2B, it is also enabled with tax payments and SSF payments in the country. So the point we are trying to say is that in Nepal, all our peer banks have very good digital solutions, but I think
Standard, how it
yeah, but where we stand out is especially in the example I gave you, which is very proprietary, which is straight to bank, which a lot of the corporates, SMEs and business houses use. Which is very different, and we are the only bank which has come out. We were the first to come out with API solutions. We are getting into blockchain now. So that's where Standard Chartered plays to its strength.
What about the future planning of Standard Chartered? Do you want to say something? Do you want to highlight something?
No, are you asking about technology?
Technological.
I think blockchain is one of the push we are going for. I think given that this is still a very import-based economy, blockchain will ease a lot of straight-through process when it comes to customs, payments, all of this thing. I think the next big focus for us is blockchain and also the remittance corridors, given that we have an onshore presence.
Anirvan, how do you analyze the overall, the importance of digital banking in the country like Nepal or the South Asian country?
So one is, I think it is important for every country, right? It's not just Nepal. Given that there is a lot of cross-border flow, especially remittances, right? I mean, look at India, Nepal as a corridor, right? And also trade, right? Digital solutions are obviously very important, and it's evolving rapidly.
Globally.
Globally, and in the South Asian context, given that we have very close ties with our neighbors in Nepal, and a lot of payment flows are happening, right? And look at the recent sign up with NPCI or UPI in India. It's a classic example, right? I mean, fact that today Nepalis will be able to remit through the QR, or tourists on both sides of the border will start making payment. So that's a great example of how the digital landscape is moving so fast.
Don't you think that the literacy level of Nepal, the socioeconomic background hampers the digital banking, the system of digital banking?
So if you look at data, just look at the data in terms of broadband penetration, etc. I mean, Nepal probably has one of the highest volumes in the world as a percentage of its population. So while you're saying literacy plays a part, but Nepal has it's a very young country, right? Median age of 26.
Right.
They're not illiterate, right? And they are very quick on their smartphones, on internet, right? And there is a lot of remittance coming into this country. A lot of Nepali youth are going. So from that point of view, I don't see Nepal falling behind. Yes, the socio-economic part is there, but with the fact that it's such a young country and the young are very different today, right? We have to cater to their needs. It's moving very rapidly.
Right, we are moving with the flow, isn't it?
You are.
You just said that the concept of digital banking is growing in Nepal, isn't it? But if we compare with the European country, then European countries are still relying on the card system. Whereas if we talk about the South Asian country or the Chinese, they have already followed the QR modalities. Do you think that the future of the global payment industry in the next 5 years, how do you analyze or how do you see that prospect?
So one is this part of the world has a huge population, right? Like take Paytm as an example in India, and similarly PhonePe, right? You can literally go around Nepal or India being cashless, literally, right? Now you're right about cards, but we always have to remember today all global payments go through SWIFT, right? Anything which is cross-border, right? And there are capabilities like ACH which runs on the back of NACH. So I made this point earlier. I think the future will be blockchain-based payment platforms. That's going to come in a big way. But you're right, in this part of the world, the payment system has evolved rapidly. And if you look at NRB's roadmap on interoperability and the whole payments system, I think Nepal, given the size of the country, will completely integrate into one solution where every system will be interoperable. Me sending money to you, you sending money to me, using QR, making payments in India, all of that. It's all going to get into one ecosystem.
But why do you think that the European countries, they have not fully accepted this modality? Is there any reason or just...
No, I mean, it's a point you raise. I don't think...
it is said.
It is probably said, but demographics also plays a very big role, right? I mean, credit cards in Nepal is substantially hasn't grown that much, right? It's still, the numbers are pretty low, but the payment ecosystem is moving very fast. Europe still uses digital solutions, not that people don't do that. Everything is online, everything is paperless. So it's a combination of both, because credit cards obviously came into that part of the world much earlier. I mean, today, this part of the world has seen credit, at least Nepal, right? We were the first to start off the credit card business, right? But there's a parallel system which is evolving rapidly. And again, it's the demographics, the young affluent who are opting for these kind of payment solutions.
Is QR safer?
I mean, all systems are prone to risk. I mean, the question is the back end, the mother system, all of that. I mean, cyber security is a big topic. So, are we going to say it's unsafe or safe? I mean, everything is subject to risk. It depends on how you safeguard the whole system or the whole ecosystem. So, I won't say QR is unsafe. We are all on QR. We are all onto wallets. Everybody today is on Google Pay and so many other kinds of payment systems. So, and all of them are prone to risk. It's how we safeguard them is important.
How we are safeguarding this technology, if we talk about the Standard Chartered itself?
So, one is we are not on a very common platform like many others,
right?
Right, and our global systems have their own firewalls, and our technology is again proprietary to us. So, I think as a bank and like any institution, we follow all the basic rules of cybersecurity, right? Phishing attacks, compromise of passwords, all the safeguards. We're not sharing this thing, looking at, spam mails, all of that, right? I mean, and those are, hygiene is followed, and today one of the biggest risks in the bank and most institutions is cybersecurity, even for regulators, right? Let me put it this way. As a CEO today, all of us have to adapt and learn 21st century survival skills or life skills, right? None of us, all of us are students, right? Back to it. So, it started with AI, API, blockchain, all of that we are constantly learning. But what we have to understand is that as custodian of banks, it's the risk and reward. So, risk always is, end of the day, we all become risk managers into every innovation, every tool that we are adopting. But to your point is, are we feeling out of place? I think we are all having to learn and adapt and keep pace. And banks will always be a combination of both, right? Banks won't go away in a hurry. Right?
Don't you think it's a bit pressure to the conventional banks?
I don't think there's pressure. There's pressure to keep up. There's a pressure to keep up because the consumer patterns are also changing. People want everything very quickly at the touch of a button, everything on the phone, right? So, there is pressure, but it's a pressure which is everywhere. Right?
Recently, this ICRA has reaffirmed the issuer rating of AAA to Standard Chartered Bank, isn't it? This for the 4th consecutive year. How do you feel?
So, it has nothing to do with my being here 4 years. One is, it's a mixed feeling. One is, it becomes very difficult once you get AAA rated, right? We are the only bank which is AAA. So, in the future, maintaining a AAA is not easy. It's balance sheet, capital, the soundness of the balance sheet, everything. And obviously, the rating agency has recognized the strength of the balance sheet. Right? I won't get into details of how ratings are done, but the other side of the feeling is that what does it get us? Because we are not sure whether the market recognizes a AAA and attaches a premium to it. And Nepal hasn't evolved in that sense, because a AAA rated bank cannot have the same requirements on a lot of parameters as a bank which is not AAA rated. And hence, it's a mixed feeling, right? It's great, but what is it getting us? Yes, it is a very safe bank, but then is there a premium attached to it? Whether it's rates, whether it's banking, whether it's certain requirements. So, I think it's a combination of both. And obviously, once you're AAA rated, you don't want to slip back from that.
Sir, I just want to know that how do you analyze the overall economic scenario of Nepal, since BFIs are facing numerous problems in the current scenario, isn't it? Like the liquidity crunch and similarly the high NPA and the growing defaulters. What is your say on this?
First is, I think any claim should be backed by data, right? Yes, there is a liquidity crunch, but the point is that post-COVID, we had a very high credit growth. It was in the 20s, right? And Nepal Rashtra Bank did the right thing by slowing down a bit of the growth, because you had a boom post-COVID, remittances led consumption and kind of brought it down to the teens, right, in terms of credit growth. The liquidity crunch can be a combination of many factors. Where has the liquidity gone, right? Has it gone to the right sector? So it could be a case of certain sectors which need the liquidity is not getting it. So that's one. I think the point you are making is the economy in a bad shape or is in a good shape. Look, Nepal's NPL levels today, if you look at South Asia, is what? 4-5% now. Yeah. Is it high? It is still not very high.
If we compare.
It's still not high. It's still not high. Are we in a recession? No. Do you see lines in petrol pumps? People are still spending. The stores are full. The hotels are full. Everybody is having a good time. I think when we talk about the Nepal economy, it has to be backed by data. From a macro lens, in South Asia, Nepal is still an example. Our reserves are back to 9 to 10 months. It never dipped below 6. Remittance is great. Yes, there's a fiscal challenge because government revenue is dipped, obviously as a result of import slowdown. Government expenditure is still slow. So while there's a fiscal challenge, Nepal has a very low debt to GDP. It is pegged to the INR, which insulates it from a lot of problems. The reserves are high. And so overall, I think this whole liquidity NPL thing has to be backed by data. We don't see this as a big issue as far as the Nepal industry is concerned or the country is concerned. And obviously, there's a bit of consolidation, there's a bit of new norms which are coming into the industry, which is leading to a bit of the NPLs. Right?
On this background, how difficult is it for Standard Chartered Bank to retain its regular profit and to maintain its position?
Now, I don't know what you see of our position, right? Because if you look at our profits, given our scale, so we are what, 15 branches and 500 odd people, right? And our closest peer bank would be at least 100 branches or 1500 people. But if you see that size, we still on an absolute basis would be in the top 8 in terms of profits, right? Which shows that the efficiency or profit per employee or the efficiency of the bank is very high, right? Now, have we been growing year on year? I think we have, right? Despite all the challenges, and so have others, right? Now, the point is, our position is defined very differently compared to, we are a bank which is present in many markets, right. And our participation in Nepal is very different. We are here for a certain purpose, right? So, our NPLs are one of the lowest in the industry. Our capital, we are probably the highest capitalized bank in Nepal. We have a capital adequacy ratio of 14 to 15%. Our EPS is probably number 2 in the industry. Our dividend paying capability is in the top 3. So, I think that's the glide path which we have, is to maintain very high returns and efficiency for our shareholders and drive our participation model. We cannot be everything everywhere in the world, right? We operate in many markets, and Nepal, our purpose is very different.
So how do you see the challenges in Nepalese market, since you mentioned about the challenges? Is there any, or don't you feel
there are challenges in every market. So
right. What about
I don't
Nepal?
think we are going to use that as something to complain about, right? Every market has a challenge, right? And today, I think the biggest challenge for us is not what is in Nepal, but what is around Nepal. So you have the whole geo-inflation, right? Inflation, commodity prices, the Ukraine war, all these have a spilling effect. So that's one. Globally, and it has an effect on Nepal, right? As oil prices increase, as the dollar appreciates, as the Fed hike rates, as inflation, and we mirror the India inflation, right? But is that going to spoil the party? I mean, high interest rate doesn't mean high rates of growth cannot happen. So that's the one part, right? So it is Nepal in the middle of all that which is happening in South Asia. And you see what has happened in Sri Lanka. Bangladesh has had an issue, but it's again an economy which is going to grow by leaps and bounds. Then you have the regulatory piece where we believe, at least NRB is taking a lot of steps to accelerate the graduation of our financial industry into the next level, which could be Basel III, could be risk-based pricing, new capitalization norm. Because the Nepalese financial industry has to grow, it has to evolve, it has to develop the infrastructure to attract FDI. So now these do create challenges for banks. The way interest rates are managed today is a challenge, but it is done with a certain purpose. Now, if we sit back and say, oh, this is a problem in Nepal, I don't think that's fair. So I think to answer your question, Nepal is in a stage of evolution, at least both in terms of financial industry, but the macros are very resilient. I mean, you've had the earthquake, you've had insurgency. The Nepal economy has survived. It has even survived a blockade, right? So it's a very resilient country, right? But what needs to accelerate fast is reforms, both in the financial sector, and I think Nepal, NRB is addressing a lot of it in terms of policies and a lot of guidelines.
So do you think NRB has taken the right strategy to move the economy of the Nepal?
So it's not about right and wrong. I mean, on one hand, there is a lot of kudos to the NRB, especially at the time where everybody was challenging Nepal's situation with reserves down to almost 6 months, and everybody kind of predicted, oh, is it going to be another Sri Lanka, right? And we bounced back, right? Right or wrong, it did hurt a lot of industries. There's always this debate, did the import curves really help? But the fact of the matter is, credit growth slowed down, rates went up, inflation got tamed, and the reserves are back up. So that's one example. Second is, it is always a very tough act for the regulator to balance all sides, right? And I think from that point of view, NRB is doing a great job, right? I mean, the interests of the country is first, right? Now, as banks or industry might have a bit of a challenge or step back, but ultimately it is safeguarding the Nepalese economy which is more important and which is not very diversified. You have to remember that the entire economy runs on one silver bullet, which is remittances, essentially.
In Nepal,
right?
Right.
Until we have import substitution through power and agriculture and all that, there are a lot of steps which have to be taken.
So what makes this Standard Chartered Bank bit outstanding among other competitors?
See, we have a lot of respect for our
other competitors,
because we also bank the banks. Right? So I don't want to use the word outstanding, and this is something we struggle telling our shareholders, our patrons, that see, we are a different bank, because like I said, that we cannot be everything in Nepal. We are in many markets, right? In Nepal, clearly our purpose is defined by our network. See, we bring the network into Nepal, whether it's India, Nepal, China, Nepal, Korea, Nepal, Japan, Nepal, investments. Second is, today if you look at the G20 currencies, 60 to 70% is cleared by Standard Chartered Bank, right? Trade, 40% of the trade transactions are handled by Standard Chartered Bank. So now these don't come out in the public domain very easily. So we, in many ways, are very integral to the success of Nepal. So from a financial perspective, it's not a very big number for the bank globally, right? But the bank is very committed, because being the only international bank, it means very different. Because the purpose here is to drive prosperity for Nepal through the network, through the FDIs coming in, through the participation in national pride projects. If you look at any national pride project, Melamchi is a client, So, all Standard Chartered Bank, right? We have been directly or indirectly involved. So, that's our role, right, in the country.
Sir, how difficult is it to manage the international norms in the country like Nepal?
So, in any country we operate, the first primary responsibility is to adhere to the local rules, right? And it's always a balance. It's not that Nepal laws are very different, or it's a balancing act, right? And we always give adherence to first Nepal Rashtra Bank regulations, and then try and marry and balance it with our home regulators.
Right.
So, it's not very difficult. It's the same in every country. It is a balancing act. It does get challenging, but ultimately we operate in Nepal. So, it has to be Nepal first, right? And then where we cannot, or there is an issue, we have a very healthy discussion with the regulator.
Is it easy to balance, sir?
It is not easy to balance in any market.
Not only in Nepal, right?
I have worked in many markets. Compared to any other market, I don't find it very difficult in Nepal. I mean, so far, we've been able to balance it out. It's never been a very big issue.
How this Standard Chartered Bank is contributing in Nepal's economy?
Let me try and break this down into a couple of areas. So, firstly, from a regulatory framework, and this is not just about us, I think we work a lot with the local banks because we've been here for a long time, and as the financial industry evolved through, say, AML, KYC, a lot of the regulations which came, we continue to work very closely with the regulators in defining and establishing these rules and regulations, financial crime. So, and you take IFRS 9, accounting standards, like the training which we give to our fellow colleagues in the banking industry, the regulators. So, in the global regulatory space across subjects, that is one of our biggest contributions, because we have seen it in many markets. We've also learned both through, experiences and also case studies, right. So, that is one big piece. Second is, like I mentioned, just as a bank, given that we clear currencies, almost 60 to 70% of certain currencies, and trade of 40 to 50% routed through us, says a lot, right. The other thing is that the cost of clearing and foreign exchange in this country becomes efficient because you have an international bank operating on the ground. See, if we weren't operating here and they were rooted, the cost goes up. But because we are present on the ground for the Nepali public, students and everybody, or the banks, the clearing cost comes down. So, that's the other example. Then is the question of FDI, right. Any international investor invariably comes from a country where we are present. Right. We are the only bank in Nepal which is present across so many markets, especially if you look at Asia, Africa and the Middle East. We are there everywhere. Right. And for Nepal, like Malaysia, Korea, Japan, we are very big in all these, and we are very big in India, right. We are very big in Bangladesh, we are very big in Sri Lanka, right. So if you look at all this, right, and the fact that we are the single point of contact for FDI, right, and the multilateral. So if I put all of this together, it goes back to the point we made earlier that our role is very different, and that's what Standard Chartered Bank is, besides everything else we do like any other bank, right.
While talking about FDI, what is your analysis on the environment?
So, I'll give a very short answer. It's not a question of friendly or unfriendly. I think what Nepal needs to develop very quickly is the infrastructure for FDI to come in.
We are developing,
Yeah, but do you have swap mechanisms? Do you have hedging mechanism? You see, the money will come in different currencies. Now, infrastructure means the ability for an investor to bring in money and for Nepal to offer different kind of instruments on FDI. It could be bonds. See, today we don't even have a vibrant capital markets yet. We don't even have a secondary market. We don't have a strong debt capital market. Now, I am not saying that these are issues, but these are being developed. It has to be developed first. So, my answer would be infrastructure. In fact, Standard Chartered Bank is having a very big international financing conference on May 12th, and with the sole purpose to develop the legal framework. It's already there, like you said, we have. But is it developed enough?
It is not sufficient.
Yes, because
So what kind of infrastructure you are talking about?
so it can range from hedging to long tenor instruments, sustainable finance instruments. See, today the biggest attraction for Nepal is what? Clean energy. That's the biggest attraction.
Clean energy, agriculture, tourism.
Yeah, but tourism today is still 7% of GDP. Will it move the dial? Whereas energy today can wipe out the deficit. It can match up with remittances one day. I mean, do the math, 40,000 megawatts. Even if Nepal generates 15,000 megawatts, at today's tariffs, that is equal to just matching up with remittance and buying, wiping out the balance of payment deficit.
Do we have market for that?
I'm sure we have market for that.
India and Bangladesh?
Today, forget the market. I mean, today's Nepal's import for itself, right, can be, I mean, just in theory, the amount of power Nepal can generate can actually just clean out its own import requirements on oil, whether it's electric cars, electric buses, heating, right. So, it's a combination of market where with the pressure on the climate agenda, we are already seeing exports into India, right. Bhutan is a classic example, but Nepal has a bigger capacity. So there's definitely a market, because we are
That
not
might be India or Bangladesh, isn't it?
it could be both. I
Right.
mean, now I can't comment on the politics, right? I mean, but if you just look at the mathematics around it, right? The fact that Nepal can still in the near term generate 15,000 megawatts, it will consume how much? 3,000, 4,000, 5,000? You still have at least 8,000 megawatts of power which can be exported out, and right? And it's blessed. I mean, in terms of water resources, Nepal is second to Brazil, right? But the climate is changing rapidly. Solar is another example. People always talk about hydro. I mean, we as a bank think solar is the way to go, given the radiation, the elevation and all of that.
Solar or wind energy, isn't it? That means we have to focus on the clean energy, isn't it?
I mean, like people say that Nepal is the water tank for 1.5 billion people. Right?
Right. So, what is your say on the the future of banking industry in Nepal?
I think we are already seeing the future. I mean, there is a move to have digital bank licenses. Now, are they really digital in the true sense? I think the banking industry will have to align with Nepal's economic growth and depends on which sector. So, as infrastructure comes in, right, and infrastructure will come in, whether you already have airports, you will need highways. I mean, without roads, roads fuel commerce. I mean, it's an old saying, right?
The basic thing is road infrastructure.
Road network, connectivity. I mean, look at the railway projects which are being talked about. So, you will have PPPs, you will need blended finance instruments. Like I said, right, you cannot have financing for such infrastructure projects being done in the conventional way. So, banks will have to play an important role. But on the retail side, I think we are seeing a very fast move on the digital space. And Nepal is already there, right? I mean, do you use cash in Nepal? Hardly.
Not
right?
much, not much.
But there is a lot of, it's still a very cash reliant economy, given a porous border, a lot of cash. But if you look at the youth, you look at the new segments, everything is going cashless.
Now, what should be done from our side to make it more, friendly to the public?
So today,
in terms of digital banking,
I think I'll again take the example of India because it's closer to Nepal, is Aadhaar, right? See, the integration, there is a move to integrate the payment system, but imagine a credit bureau, a national payment ID, everything integrated, right? It would make it so easy, right? Today for us, whether it's tax returns, anything, it's all a single point, right? You have your Aadhaar, you have your PAN, everything is integrated. I think that is something which, and it makes KYC easier, it makes opening of accounts easier, it makes access to credit easier. I think that integration is something which needs to be, I think there's a national payment ID system which is, or national ID system which is being talked about.
The national economy, Nepal's national economy in the next 5 years, how do you visualize?
It's a very short answer. I mean, Nepal is a very remittance-led consumption-led economy. It needs to move to an infrastructure-led economy, right? And like I mentioned earlier when we met up, that we are sandwiched between two of the biggest economies in the world and
China.
Another one which is expected to become a trillion one day, Bangladesh, right? At on three sides, I mean, Nepal can't help but ride that wave and prosper, given the demographics. If you ask us, we see clearly energy, agriculture, because manufacturing we talk about, but will it really move the dial? Will it be competitive, given that you have such a big manufacturing hub all over the world? I think Nepal's strength is its agri, and both conventional, traditional agriculture and the commercial. And if it can fix the supply chain, it can be today it's a net importer, right? Which is strange. It's such a fertile place. Whether you see the Terai region, look at Kathmandu Valley, it's so fertile, right? So agriculture, and you have then infrastructure. Energy and infrastructure, you know, the corridors, the railway, the transits, it can play a very big role. I mean, WTO itself predicts that one day trade between India and China will flow through Nepal, right?
Do you really think that?
I don't know whether
can be a transit of between these two economic giants.
It's a dream one would love to have, because
definitely.
all Nepal would have to do is just sit there on the check post. And because the distance between two of these markets is what, 150, 200 kilometers?
Around.
And with the pace at which infrastructure, who knows? Who knows? But at the same time, even within India, right, if you take the east-west corridor, right, you have Himachal on one side and West Bengal. And imagine a corridor through Nepal, right, which today you are seeing the Chittagong port do for Northeast India, right. There is so much of economies of scale, and of course, subject to the politicians, but as businessmen and commercially, Nepal has massive potential, right, sitting in between.
To catch that potential, what are the things that Nepal should follow?
I think you know the answer. We need political stability. I think minus of that, there is enough money out there. There's enough interest in FDI. You have a proactive regulator who is making every effort to develop the infrastructure. I think Nepal's banking industry is very sound, right? I think where we get a bit lost is the political stability.
Since we are celebrating this Digital Banking Awareness Month, do you want to advise on safe digital banking to our audience?
I think it's the basic hygiene which we always talk about our phones, password, emails, you know, how you develop your passwords, you look out for phishing attacks, spam. I mean, the attacks are happening around the clock. I mean, a lot of us get spam phone calls, even I get spam phone calls, right? And I think people have to be careful with their bank accounts.
So in what way we have to be careful?
I mean, how you develop your passwords, where you keep your apps, the security of your phone, who you share with, it's all very basic. I think all of us know that, right?
So on this note, do you want to give some, some of the example to our audience so that they will understand?
I'll ask your audience to watch a Netflix serial. It's called Janata. Janata. Watch Janata. I found it very fascinating. I think if you watch that movie serial, it's a very interesting serial on cybercrime, right? And given that everybody understands Hindi, I think that itself will give you an idea of what to not to do.
Well, thank you so much, Anirvan, for coming to our studio and for giving your idea on this digital banking awareness. Thank you very much, Anirvan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Well, thanks to you as well, the audience, for giving your time to us. Keep watching News 24 television. Namaste.
Digital Banking Awareness Month. Title sponsor, Standard Chartered Bank Limited, here for good, powered by Seva. In association with Prabhu Bank Limited, power to succeed. NIC Asia, Bank Pani, Sathi Pani, Ramro Pani, Hamro Pani. Supported by Connect IPS, pay direct from bank. Sunrise Bank Limited, Hami Sangsangai. Sanima Bank Limited, Sabal Ani Biswasiniye. सिद्धार्थ बैंक, सम्बन्ध सधैँभरिलाई। महालक्ष्मी विकास बैंक लिमिटेड, सबल बैंक, सफल सहकार्य। आइसिएफसी फाइनेन्स लिमिटेड, योर कम्प्लिट ब्याङ्किङ सल्युसन। नमस्ते पे, पेमेन्टको सरल वे। खल्ती, पैसाको नयाँ ठेगाना। IME पे,